All right. Welcome back into another episode of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Masucci, and I am super excited for this episode. Today, I am starting a new series, the Coaches Series, and I'm super excited for this. This is something I've been wanting to do on Jake's Takes for a long time, getting some big time coaches that I really respect a lot and bringing them in, kind of talking about their mentality, how they got into coaching, all that stuff. And I'm super excited to welcome in part one of this series. I got on Coach Olejniczak, who was my former football coach. And I'm super excited to have him on. He's currently the Offensive Coordinator at Lawerence Tech University. So, Coach O, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jake, and I just absolutely appreciate you having me on, give me the opportunity to talk with you and talk about, obviously, the profession that I love. So thank you very much. It means a lot to me.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking a little bit off air before we got started, but, right away when I came up with the idea for this series, I was just like, Coach O is my first call. He's my first call because, I played football 1 year. For me, like I had a lot of health challenges and, it was tough for me to get going in the sport, but I always tell everybody, I was like, that was the most prepared I've ever been in a sport, in anything. And, I really appreciated that. And me being an aspiring coach has kind of helped me set a good example for where I want to kind of be. So I'm really excited to have you on and looking forward to chop it up a little bit.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it. As soon as I got the call from you, I've told everybody how excited I was. And so looking forward to talking with you.
For sure. All right, well, let's get right into it. So I wanted to start out with kind of the person like you became. Let's talk about some past experiences that kind of get you there. As I was getting ready for the podcast, I mentioned the playing career. You played at Central Michigan, won a MAC championship at Central Michigan. So talk to me a little bit about your experience as a college football player, as an early football player, and what made you fall in love with the sport.
Part of what I fell in love with was the grind of it. By no means was I a good football player. I mean, I just wasn't. So that kind of where my coaching's taken me. I had to be prepared. Not talented. At U of D, I was a backup for most of my career, and then got the opportunity to play sparingly as a sophomore on varsity. I mean, sparingly, and then as a junior again, backup, getting in every now and then I had the great fortune of playing my senior year, was a starter. And what was very unfortunate about it, my career ended very early in high school. My high school career, I had an injury and only got to play a few games my senior year. Then go up to Central Michigan. I'm supposed to be a baseball player. I'm supposed to, I got a chance to play college baseball. I had a pretty good baseball career in high school and hurt myself again, threw my arm out. Can't play college baseball. So I literally was just up at Central Michigan. I'm like, I'm bored out of my mind. I got to do something. And someone, we were at a game. I was like, I can play out there. And they're like, no, you can't. I was like, oh, don't challenge me. And I walked on that spring, made the team, and, had, again, I wasn't anything special. My game day was practice. That was how I got prepared. Every practice to me was a game. And the bonds and the friendships I made were just unbelievable. Guys to this day who are my best friends. And what's great about football, those guys were scholarship players, some of them, and I was a walk-on. And it didn't matter. You're out there grinding. And so I think a lot of my not being great at something but always having to prepare as an athlete has helped me in my coaching profession.
Yeah, for sure. And you explaining that story, because to be honest with you, like I didn't know any of that. But you talking about like you being a walk-on, it shows in your program for like when I played with you, because like every step of the way it's like practice is the game. Like this is what we're doing, and that's what that 100% like speaks to me. Like, man, you got to work for everything you get, and like right now I'm doing the same thing, starting at the bottom with the student managing, trying to work my way up. So I love that like reflects where you are right now too, which is so cool.
Yeah, it's a mentality. It's a mentality that no matter where you're at, you can always fight to get a little better. When I was a walk-on that first year, I had to figure out a way for the coaches to get to know you, because at that point they have no clue who you are, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm Coach Cummings, who was the offensive line coach at Central Michigan, and to this day we still talk. And it was funny, he met my daughter, and he just said, "Your dad was one of the toughest SOBs I've ever met in my life," because literally the first 4 practices I got into a fight every practice, and the only
Wow.
way I'd let them throw me out of practice was they had to call me by my first name. And if they didn't call me by name, I didn't leave. And finally
That's
they knew who
awesome.
I was, and then it was good.
Hey, you got to make a name for yourself at some point,
Absolutely. That was the only
like
way I
some
knew
way,
how. That's the only way.
somehow. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure that experience kind of led you into kind of falling into a coaching aspect of it. So talk to me about like when your mindset kind of shifted and you were like, okay, I really like football and I want to stick around it.
Yeah. So, obviously we knew my career wasn't going to go anywhere past college. And my wide receiver coach, Coach Cabarrus, he said to me my senior year, he said, I know you got another year of eligibility, but I had gone through, some concussions and things like that. He's like, you're not going to make it. He says, you're going to be a special teams guy at best. I was getting my diploma. I had graduated in 4 years. And he says, do you really want to go through it? And I'm like, yeah, I think I do. He says, well, let me tell you how smart you are on the field. You can be a coach. And he says, I've gotten a call from somebody and they would ask me for who could be an assistant coach. And he says, I gave him your name. And I said, wow, really? It turned out to be at my alma mater, U of D, which I didn't know that at the
Wow.
time when we were conversing. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, it's an opportunity. And he's like, I'm highly, suggesting you should take. He says, I'll bring you back. He says, don't get me wrong, because I love you,
Hmm.
but I think this is what you should do. And that's what I ended up doing. And I went back to U of D Jesuit. I actually had a coaching job from them, but then, just felt that I needed to give back to U of D. At that time, they had helped me out a lot. And so I actually went
Yeah.
back and I volunteered at U of D for a year as what they call an alumni volunteer. And I volunteered and coached football.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and looking at like some of your stops along the way, you had U of D, Wayne State, Michigan State, and Campbell University were the ones that I wrote down. And you were kind of all over the place, like coordinator wise. More offensive line from what I remember at Shrine. You were very much in tune with the offensive line. So talk to me about like those stops and how that helped you kind of see football differently and kind of build your why as a coach.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I always say is, what I learned is you're either a coach or you're not. And you'll hear so many
Okay.
times in any coaching profession, I'm not just talking about football, you either can coach or you can't. And so many
Mhm.
people out there say, well, he's an offensive coach, he's a defensive coach, or it could even be in basketball. Even now you got coordinators for basketball, offensive side,
Yeah.
defense side, or this guy knows ball. You either can do it or you can't. And so I always had the theory that I want to learn everything about the sport. So
Mhm.
I was fortunate. I've actually coached every position except quarterback one-on-one, but as an offense coordinator, obviously you know the quarterback
Yeah.
position. I've been a defensive coordinator. I've been an offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, and then a head coach. So it was really important for me to learn everything. And,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that I was doing the right thing. It's just what I thought until I had the chance to go coach at Michigan State, because at Wayne State, I coached defense. And at
Yeah.
U of D, my
Okay.
career, I was I was on the defensive side of the ball with Coach Merchant when he was the head coach.
Yeah.
And John L. Smith brings me up, talking to me at Michigan State. And he says, yeah, we have an offensive line graduate assistant position. I was like, Coach, I've never coached O-line. And that's what he said. He said, do you know how to coach football? Are you a coach or not?
Yeah.
And he said,
Yeah.
with his colorful language. And I said, I'm a coach. And he said, then you're hired. And that was it. And so
That's awesome.
I just always have never, I don't like taking no. I'm sure you know that, Jake. That's not one of my
Yeah.
attributes.
Yep.
And even at, Wayne State, I had an interview scheduled with Coach Winters, I'm very fortunate. I had some great mentors in my life. I went to his office and he wasn't there. And the time we prescribed, I went to his secretary. She said, oh, he can't do it. I said, I'll be back tomorrow. She said, well, you don't have a scheduled time. I went and sat in front of his office for 5 hours until he showed
That's
up
awesome.
and didn't leave.
That's awesome.
And everybody thought I was nuts. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and the other thing I have to say is the support of my wife. You get in this crazy profession, you just don't know, and there's a lot of highs and lows. So I've been very fortunate to have she is the coach's wife. I mean, she's the epitome of what a coach's wife is. So that's how I got that. When you keep fighting for something, you don't ever want to lose it. And just like what you're saying, you got to start somewhere. But if you keep grinding, I'm not also the person that believes, you can get whatever you want. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I could have never been an NFL football player. I couldn't. No matter how, I could have worked every day and I wouldn't have been one. But when you're using your mind, I do believe you can accomplish pretty much anything with your mind.
Yeah. I'm actually reading the book Think and Grow Rich right now, and it talks about how like your mind and auto suggestion and like you saying like I can do this, making that a reality is so important in life. It's just a great life trait to have, and to have that really like don't take no for an answer, really. Like you coming back to that meeting and being like, oh no, like this is gonna happen. You coming back the next day. Like a lot of people call you crazy, but to be honest with you, like if they call you crazy, you're probably down the right path, because then you're going towards something that's making you excited, that's making you want to do something. And I think that's the most valuable thing, which is I feel like that's a great story, 100%. So, let's move into the interview. Let's keep going with football. So, moving into that, you then transitioned to head coaching. Okay, so you went to U of D and then Shrine for a little bit. So, talk to me about the transition from being an assistant coach to a head coach, because I feel like that's a lot of that's been a thought on my mind, because I've met a lot of really, really good assistant coaches. And I feel like it's just a big transition to now then be a part, like now you're the boss, like you're the one talking all the time. You're the one doing all that. So talk to me about that transition for you.
So there's a lot of different things that go into it. And I think I was very fortunate as I moved up the ranks, I also got more responsibility. So when I was at Campbell, I was offensive coordinator and recruiting coordinator. So having those responsibilities, teaching you to get more and more, and then to moving to the high school head coach. So here's the big difference between being a head coach and a coordinator. You get to coach a lot more football when you're a coordinator. When you're the head coach, there's a lot more you have to do that doesn't involve coaching. A lot more. So you're spread thin. And so when I look at these head coaches that are head coach / coordinator, I don't know how they do it. And when I've talked to them more and more, a lot of it is they don't have as many relationships with the people on whatever side of the ball. So if they're the offensive coordinator, they don't know what's going on defense. They really don't. They got to put a lot of trust in the people. So as a head coach, I was the offensive coordinator, but I made made sure that I always was connected with all my players. I didn't just take the offensive ball, and probably to a fault. I probably was a lot harder on the offensive guys than I was on the defensive guys. Just because I wanted to make sure those defensive guys I didn't think less of them. They were just as important. And I'd sit in on, with our defense staff, Coach Plasky, who I know you remember. Him and I used to talk all the time. What a lot of people don't remember is that Shrine, because I didn't find the right people right away, and Coach Plasky, I wanted to make sure he knew it. I actually called the offense and the defense that first year at Shrine. That was a long year.
That's got to be really tough.
That was a long year, but that's the biggest thing, man. You have so many responsibilities, and to be honest, you're responsible for these coaches, assistant coaches, and their families, because if you get fired, everybody gets fired. And that's just the way the business works. And my family, not my wife, but my family didn't understand that. They just like, oh, poor, like when I was at Michigan State, poor John L. Smith. I'm like, poor John L. Smith. He's got 3 more years left on his contract. How about us? We ain't got nothing.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that out there. They just think it's so easy to go find these jobs, and it's not. So a head coach has a lot of stress, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And, as a coordinator, it's stressful, but, the livelihood of the coaches is not on me. It's on the head guy. So I think that's what's really big. And I don't have to worry what's going on defense. I just got to go score points. I just got to go score points. And as the recruiting coordinator, I got to make sure everybody's set up for success to be good recruiters. So it's a lot easier. I'll be honest. Head coaching's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, speaking of that, to transition into the head coach, like I see it with like within the Oakland organization, like right now, like we had camp today, right? And you're seeing like the person that's running the camp is our associate head coach, which is Jeff Smith. Campy's out doing other stuff, like he's recruiting, he's doing different stuff on a
Fundraising
day-to-day
and
basis.
alumni. Oh yeah.
Exactly. Like there's so much other things that go into like being the head coach where it's difficult for them to even like sit down and like during the season you can sit down and like go through film. But like off season it's really hard to even like be locked in on like a summer practice,
Yeah. Oh, you're nailing it. And see, this is where you'll have an advantage over people who say, "I just want to be a coach."
Yeah.
You're living it every day, and you're doing it from the ground up. Also, you've been around some pretty good coaches in your family there. Your your dad and your uncle and
Yeah.
everybody else, your grandpa. So you've been around some good coaches, and I think if you're around it, you get a better understanding. You understand how you got to do it. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that one day we're going to see Jake Masucci as the head coach at Michigan State, but what it
Exactly.
does
Yeah.
mean is you'll have a chance. And
Mhm.
that's all that you can ask for because you're seeing it the right way. But yeah, it's head coaching is it's no joke, and it's not for everybody. You can see, you see in the NFL, see coordinators that get in there and they were great coordinators, and all of a sudden they're fired in a year, and so it's tough. It's tough for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a really tough business. I mean, like I talk about it in the NBA on a day-to-day basis when I'm just doing a random NBA podcast. Like, there's one day Mike Budenholzer wins the coach of the year, and then the next day he's fired because they lost in the playoffs.
Right,
It's just
exactly.
it's a tough business.
It's a tough, and everybody thinks we all make a ton of money too. Think, oh, you're just going to be a
Yep.
millionaire right away. Yeah, no, it don't work that way. I mean, it's at Wayne State. Everyone's like, oh, you're leaving UG and going to Wayne State. I thought my wife was going to kill me when I told her what we were getting paid at Wayne State. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're
I
good,
mean,
but
they
I wouldn't
call
trade
us
it for the
crazy for
world.
a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for the
Yeah.
world.
No, it's awesome. It is really awesome. Well, we are actually going to take a little break, and then once we get back, we'll switch into some more current things, and I have a couple more questions for Coach O. So we'll be right back.
Sounds great.
Welcome, everybody, to the JOMO Show, your home for Oakland sports and beyond from WXOU. My name is Giovanni Mosheri, and I am the host of the one and only show that covers the Oakland University Golden Grizzlies each and every week. Subscribe to the JOMO Show for weekly interviews with athletes and coaches, for a recap of the week's action at OU, and whatever else is going on in the sports world. You can tune in on 88.3 FM, WXOU, or wherever you get your podcasts each week. Go Golden Grizzlies on the JOMO Show.
All right. Welcome back into the show. And now we're going to switch over, talk about Coach O's new job. So now he is with Lawerence Tech. He is the offensive coordinator there. And I was super pumped when I heard the news. I was so pumped. I was just like, let's go. He's back in the coaching world. Right when he left Shrine, I was a little upset, but like I just graduated. The season after I graduated it was a tough season. We lost a lot of seniors. My class had a lot of good football players that, that really helped the class. So I was always like catching in, watching some games. And, right when you got this job, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, because I knew Merchant was gonna do a great job and all of that. So talk to me about, we were talking about head coaching. You're shifting into head coaching. Now you're shifting back into an offensive coordinator role. So with that head coaching experience under your belt, talk to me about what you're seeing for yourself in this offensive coordinator position.
Yeah, I tell you what I'm seeing is, my older self now compared to when I was a younger guy as an offensive coordinator at Campbell, understanding what the head coach is going through. And we're very fortunate at Lawerence Tech. Coach Merchant hired Coach Nystrom as our defensive coordinator. He was the head coach at Northern Michigan for 6 years. Also interim head coach at Central Michigan. So he's got 2 coordinators with former head coaching experience. And we talk, we talk all the time that, one of our jobs is to make Coach Merchant's jobs easier, to be very honest with you. And as a young guy, I didn't understand that at all. I was always like, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he doing this? Or why is he doing that? Or why, and now I sit back and I'm like, man, I was an idiot. He had so much on his plate that I just didn't get it. And so now that's one thing as I've grown older, understanding what the head coach and what they have on their plate. So I think that's really helped me. If I can handle a situation, handle it, and then tell the head coach afterwards, like, hey, I took care of this, but I don't want you to be blindsided by it. And then offensively, I think I've always been like this. I've always been detailed oriented. One of my favorite quotes is effort without details equals failure. You can run around in circles super fast, but if you ain't going anywhere, you're going to lose. So I've done that. And, as my daughter says, I had the phrase before anybody is trust the process. And Jake, about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big to me. Every day is part of the process. So now understanding that even more as I've gotten older, I think it helps out my players tremendously because we just got there, right? I just got there in end of January, beginning of February, and laid it out right away. And Coach Merchant and Coach Nystrom, we laid out, this is how it is. This is how it's going to be. You have 2 choices. You can be a part of this or you can transfer. So that was a big part of, us. I really think we're building, and we know, would we love a championship next year? Of course we would. But we're going to build it the right way. We're not going to, our philosophy, I'm not saying anything bad about other coaches. Our philosophy wasn't to come in and clean house. These are young people too who have lives and, who have feelings. It was, you're just going to do it our way. And if you don't, then you're cutting yourself. We're not cutting you. That's, Lawerence Tech right now. We had a great recruiting class. We got some dudes transferring in that are coming from some pretty big places. And I think we can do some good things.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It really brings me back to like the days sitting in the locker room, like hearing the plays, learning the playbook, all that stuff. It brings me back. It kind of puts me on the edge of my seat, that's something with football where I was just like, gosh, the strategy's so cool. And like, I wish I was healthy enough to like really, like experience it and like get it, because it never clicked for me. Both my brothers had great experiences with football. I absolutely loved it. And it clicked for them, and I could tell. And they were always like, Jake, just wait for it to click because it will, and, and I was like,
bro.
Exactly. Trust the process. And I was like, well, I'm trying really hard and it's not clicking. So I don't know what's going on. But, like seeing all of my friends like go through it, and absolutely love it and grow as people from it. I think that's really the cool part of football. So, to touch on that a little bit, like talk to me about the relationships like with players that football has brought for you. And in coaching,
it's everything. It's everything. It's kind of where I start. I understand that they're people and I care about them. Now, am I hard? I mean, Jake, I don't play, but at the end of the day, everybody knows I care and love about them, and it's a true statement when we say, "Once your family, you're always your family." And my football family, my wife, my daughter, it's so true. And I'll give the perfect example. We just had my daughter's graduation Saturday. She's going off to Penn State. And we had players that played for me 17 years ago at Campbell drive in and fly in from North Carolina to be part of her day. And my couple current Lawerence Tech players, they were there. And, coaches, I mean, Coach Barnes, who was at Foley, she invited him. He came to her graduation, and so that type of family, that tight knit family. So relationships are everything, and I think so many young coaches forget that. They think it's all about X's and O's and X's and O's. And it's really not, because if you don't build a relationship and they can't trust you as a coach, they will not play for you. And I think that's where you see so many great players have so many issues with coaches, because they just, a lot of times the coaches don't care what happens off the field. And that is not true. You know, Jake, you were part of the program, and it was academics. It was our community service. It was your family. It was all that stuff. So that's what makes a football player. And I firmly believe in that. And then those relationships carry on for a very, very long time. And my door is always open to my players, phone, coaches I've coached with. And so it starts with relationships, and everything builds from there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think you nailed it on the head. I mean, like, that's everything that I try to consume, with coaching. Is like how they approach relationships, how they do this. And when my dad interviewed Mike Garland on his podcast, Mike Garland talked about the importance of building relationships. And I mean, he has a great book called The Goji, where he really like dove deep into talking about like relationships with specific players and like how they got through things. Like for a lot of these guys, it's so important to have that figure, because some people, like, they don't have a father figure to look up to, and coaches can be that for them. So I think it's really cool, the relationship aspect of coaching, and like what it really brings to the table.
Yeah, and what I want to add to that is, also where I think some coaches make a mistake is they think they can be the substitute for maybe a kid's father or his uncle or his grandpa. You're not the substitute. You're part of it. You're an addition. I've coached a lot of guys who was just mom. I wasn't trying to come in to be the man figure. I was trying to come in and help. And I think that pays off in the long run. And like I said, I learned that from, trust me, this isn't something I just came up with, man. I've been with some amazing human beings, and Jeff Stoutland and Dale Steele and Scott Merchant. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I've just been very, very, Paul Winters. I've just been very fortunate that I've learned from some great people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Talking about those relationships and talking about like with the players, that kind of transitions into like bringing the players in. So let's talk about recruiting just a little bit. Pretty much, it's hard to find a perspective on recruiting, because like you were half college, half high school. So it's different in both those areas. So talk to me about like the difference between the two and how you approached both of them.
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. So I'll start with college. So college recruiting, I'm old school. I'm old school. Trust me, I know the importance of social media. I know young people, social media is very important to them. But also to see a kid's face light up when his high school coach goes and pulls him out of class and says, hey, and it's not just me, it's whatever college coach, is here to see you. They're here to see you. And that's huge. And I'm going to tell you, that was a big part of my daughter. That's not just football. That's, like admissions. Penn State's admissions person went to Shrine, and she got to meet Izzy face. That's so important. You can't get that relationship by sending somebody a direct message, on X, Twitter, or whatever, or Instagram. You can't get that. And it's a lost art nowadays. And, Coach Merchant, myself, are firm believers that we're going to go face to face. So this spring, we went, Lawerence Tech staff, in a less than 4-week period, hit over 300 schools in person.
Wow.
And I think that's what's going to pay off for us. But like you said, it's building relationships. Then you got to follow up, and that's when the phone calls, and then it's the text messages and things like that. High school, where it's different, is you have to put out a product to show these middle schoolers that they should come to your high school. Once they come for a visit or they contact you, then that's where you flip it, and now you're the one to go after them to build the relationship. So you got to build a product. So on the high school end, you got to advertise it, you got to market it. Social media is so important, the internet, all those things. And then you have to market yourself and your program and your high school. See, that's where high school is different. If the high school doesn't get on board what you're trying to build in the football program, you won't build it. It won't happen.
Yeah.
Where in college, you may not need the president to be on board. You just need them to kind of stay away. But if you build it, they're going to come. But you got to have a good product with the college. You can't have a college that has poor academics. I mean, you just can't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or poor facilities or whatever. But you don't need that full-on support of your university. You just need them to back you a little bit and stay out of the way.
Okay.
And then if you get both, like we have at Lawerence Tech, we have a president and athletic director that is super, super supportive and is all in. Now you got something really special. And that's what we're building at Lawerence Tech. So the high school, that's why you sometimes you'll see the highs and the lows because everybody's not on the same page. And then you got these other coaches that might go outside the lines a little bit, And here's what I'll say to that. What are you teaching these young people, these 8th graders, when you're teaching them it's okay to go outside the lines? And I truly believe that's why you're seeing so many issues now in college athletics with guys transferring 4, 5, 6 times. Hey, I know one because there's a bad, it wasn't the right fit. You thought it was something on your visit and it just wasn't a good fit. And I can even see 2. I really can. And I don't see any issues with it. But 4, 5, 6, there's a problem. There's a problem. And I really believe you could go back and see where that issue came up, and it would stem from early on.
Yeah. Speaking to that a little bit, like, while you were in college football, it was before the NIL age. So now that you're back in, talk to me about that. Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, I've just seen such an impact of it on Oakland University. For example, like Trey Townsend going to Arizona because Chris Conway going to Washington.
Right.
It's just things like that completely changes pretty much the whole aspect of college football and college recruiting, because college football, there's more money in the game too. So talk to me about that a little bit and how it's impacted Lawerence Tech so far and how it's impacted you and your recruiting philosophy.
So it hasn't. I'm going to be really honest. It hasn't right now, but I'm going to be honest with you. It will in the future. There's no doubt with us being a high academic school that's connected with a lot of businesses and technology. We truly believe that we can get into that part of it with NIL, doing it the right way. The other aspect, to be very honest, we can see how, because we're going to do things the right way and we're going to build the program up. We're going to have really good players who have been coached really well. And we know that schools are going to come after our guys. We just know it. It's going to eventually happen. So it hasn't affected us yet, but I believe it's going to be a positive and a negative for us. What I will say is, I believe college athletes should get what they deserve. Okay. What is deserve? Everybody's got different meanings of it. But I wish there was some more boundaries so everybody could be on the same page. And when I say the same page, I know you have your Power 5. Their page is different than Lawerence Tech. And I know that I ain't the smartest guy in the world, but I understand that stuff. But I still feel that we can use it as an advantage in the right way. And so it's not NIL money, but we talk about our internships. Like our guys get paid big time internships. I mean, big time. They make a ton of money. And we got guys making $10, $12, $15,000 in the summer for like 2.5 months.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. And so where we are really focusing our recruiting is we're recruiting academics, high character, and football at a championship level. I think by doing that, where we're getting this great diploma in 4 years, that it's going to be really hard for guys to steal us, because our guys are going to graduate and make between $100,000 and $120,000 at 22 years old. Well, if a guy comes in from the GLIAC or FCS or the MAC and says, hey, we're going to give you a $50,000 NIL, I'm going to look at that guy and be like, okay, you're going to get it now, but what's going to happen at the end? And I think we're going to be able to hold a lot of our guys. So I think we have a great plan. Coach Merchant has really put a good plan together. And so I think we're going to be okay. So I think in the end, it's going to be a huge positive for us.
For sure. I really like how you laid that out, because Lawerence Tech is definitely like an interesting school to kind of look at because it is like a strong, academic base. And my cousin Marty Masucci went there and he absolutely loved it because it's a very good school for like its specific needs,
Mhm.
and I really like that. I've been on the campus a few times, and I'll definitely be at a lot of football games this year. So
Good.
yeah,
I
no.
love it.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for that aspect for sure. That kind of leads into one of my last questions. But going into this season, what are your personal expectations for yourself? Because you're moving into a new role. It's very different situation that you've been in for a couple of years. So talk to me about some personal expectations for yourself.
Well, they're very high. I'm gonna be honest with you. Um, what a lot of people don't know is at Campbell University, I helped start that football program from scratch. They had a hiatus
Okay.
for, I don't know, 65, 70, 75 years, whatever it is, with no football. So I was on the
Yeah.
initial staff that started it from the ground up. Lawerence Tech is not the ground up. It's been in existence for 6 years now. But
Hmm.
my expectations are extremely high. And,
Yeah.
as a coach, I think good coaches put pressure on themselves. And so this goes back to recruiting. In college, I can pick my players. In high
Hmm.
school, I can't necessarily pick my players, or shouldn't pick my players. So if I screw up, it's if we have a bad season, it's my fault. It's not theirs. And I truly
Yeah.
believe that. And so my expectations are high, but I understand that I'm going to have 40 guys on offense who all 40 have never played together before. I have a brand new offense that is completely different than the previous offense that they had. Um, I'll just leave it at that with the type of offense that we're putting in. So I know there's going to be the challenges and there's going to be highs and lows, but at the end of the day, I feel strongly about my staff on offense. I feel strongly about the players. As a matter of fact, we got a virtual meeting Wednesday night to start our install already, because
Nice.
we don't have the finances to house them on campus, but that doesn't mean I'm not
Yeah.
going to do what I know what we're supposed to do. So we're going to meet in day one install
Yeah.
virtually. So the expectations are high. My expectations for my players are high, but I also understand there's going to be highs and lows. But I feel if I give them everything I have and my staff does, that we'll come out and we'll have a good year.
For sure. For sure. Well, I'm really appreciative of you coming on the podcast. This has been a lot of fun. Before we go, I know there was something that you wanted to talk about within the
Yeah.
coaching world. So kind of lay it on me here.
Yeah. So, as a young guy, I was probably one of those guys that I was kicked out of the office. The head coach was like, it's time to go. I was there, I'd be there 6, 7 a.m. Campbell, though, was a little different. I was able to drive my daughter to school, but then my stupid thing was, well, I didn't get in the office till 8, so that means I got to stay till 11 midnight. And that was completely wrong.
Yeah.
You have to have something else. And so many young guys don't. And you easily can get burned out. And whether
Yeah.
it's a simple, weekend away with your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance, your kids, things like that. Don't miss Halloween. You can take an hour off of work to take your kid around trick-or-treating, stuff I didn't do. Now, as I've gone on, I really realized I made some mistakes, but you have to have something else or you're going to get
Yeah.
burned out. And at the end of the day, it's going to hurt your family and it's going to hurt you. So, simple things like gardening or watching stupid shows on TV, that don't mean anything, that just make you laugh. But don't do your sport, basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever it is, 24/7, because it's gonna hurt you. And that's the same exact advice I give athletes. Like I don't recruit single sport athletes. I just don't. I understand when some of these high schoolers get to a level like a LeBron, but people don't know LeBron played football, right? LeBron
Yep.
played football.
Yep.
Allen Iverson played football. And then when they knew they were going to get the big money, they stopped. So multi-sport athletes doing other things, being a part of clubs, I think is so important for the youth and adults.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. That's part of the reason why I'm trying to spread myself so thin, I have 3 jobs. I have 3 jobs at Oakland. I work at the golf course. I'm teaching swim lessons at my grandma's. I got the podcast. I got all these other stuff, and I really think it's just set my life on the right course.
Yes.
And I feel like, especially with like young people and social media and all this, like there's a lot of pressure to like set yourself on that right course. And I feel like finding like a hobby that you really enjoy, or finding something else that takes you away from work that you really enjoy is very huge. And I really think you hit that point home well.
I appreciate it, Jake. And you're like I said, it's people like you said, we only coached together for 1 year, and I would do anything for you and your family. So I appreciate you asking me on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I told you, you were my first call. You were my first call with this, and I was super excited to do this. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to get this out there. So big thank you to Coach Olejniczak for coming on the podcast. That's going to wrap up the show for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching, wherever you're at. Go like, subscribe on YouTube. Go follow the channel on Spotify. Do what you got to do to help out the show. And that's going to wrap it up for today. I will see you guys next time. Peace.